In this presentation, we'll look at who we ought to have as the members of the lineup who aren't the suspect, the people that we know are innocent. These people are known as fillers, distractors, or foils. Wells and colleagues recommend using at least 5 fillers in a lineup. However, a key question is how we select these fillers. For a start, the fillers should be chosen so it is not obvious who the suspect is to someone who wasn't an eyewitness to the crime. So fillers should not look dramatically different to the suspect and should not be wearing markedly different clothes. There have been cases of officers using foils who are a different race or even different gender from the suspect. One way of testing if fillers are sufficiently similar is to conduct a mock witness test, where people who did not see the offender and did not know who the suspect is try and pick out the suspect based on a verbal description provided by the actual eyewitness. If the lineup is fair, then they should perform at chance. In an ideal world, we'd want lots of mock witnesses to test every lineup we create. But given this isn't practical in reality, Wells suggests using at least 1 or 2 people to try and guess who the suspect is. However, there is another problem that mock witness testing doesn't solve, which is whether the fillers are too similar to the suspect. One standard practice is that police often try to make the foils look as similar to the suspect as possible. It's been found in some studies that if the fillers are too similar, then the rate of accurate identification of the culprit decreases. This could be the case if it's a photographic lineup where a large database of filler faces is available. Why is this? Well, consider the extreme case. Imagine a situation where we manage to find a number of foils that look absolutely identical to the suspect. Even an eyewitness with a perfect memory of the criminal won't be able to tell them apart for all the wrong reasons. It isn't because they don't know what the criminal looks like, it's because every member of the lineup looks like the criminal. So their own mother won't be able to tell them apart. So, how should you choose your fillers? One generally accepted strategy is to get a verbal description of the perpetrator by the witness and then ensure that all the fillers match this verbal description. However, there might be exceptions to this. For example, one exception would be if the suspect does not match the witness's verbal description of the perpetrator. This can happen if they became a suspect based on something other than the eyewitness's description. Let's say the eyewitness said they had a moustache when the suspect doesn't. Then fillers should match the suspect, not the description. So, no moustaches, even though that was part of the eyewitness's verbal description. Another example of when we wouldn't want to just match the fillers with the eyewitness's verbal description is when that description is very vague. For example, they say that the perpetrator was a white male and say nothing else. If we just match that description, then we'll potentially get very different looking people in the lineup. Instead, the recommendation in a case like this is that fillers should be similar to the suspect on general characteristics, such as facial hair, hairstyle, and build.